My name's Brennan. I'm a senior here. It's my 5th year. I'm a double major in literature and Spanish. And what I did for my capstone is I found this book by Nicolas Davila. He's a real aristocratic, rich person in Colombia who was afforded the privilege of reading his whole life. And he wrote down all his knowledge and wisdom in aphorisms. So he has 5 of these books. They're all about 380 pages long of aphorisms. And so I'm translating them. And it's been a lot of fun. So to start, I'll let you all pass around the book if you want to see it. And this is the manuscript of what I have translated so far, if you can see that too. So the book is called Escolios a un texto implicito, meaning scholia to an implicit text. And scholia are notes on the margins, basically, footnotes. The implicit text being life or being. So it's a rather philosophical text, pretty literary as well. As I said, Davila was a very rich man. His father owned an international business. So when his father died, he assumed control of that business for 2 weeks and then passed the business off to his son. It's kind of like he only worked 2 weeks of his life. So what did he do with his whole life? He read. One person said of Davila, nació, leía y murió. He was born, he read, and then he died. And he lived to be about 82, so it's a pretty full life as an author. He received an elite education in Europe at an early age, and he fell terminally ill for 2 years when he was a teenager, during which he was taught Greek and Latin by private tutors and began to read deeply in the classics. When he returned from Europe, he got married and had a house built for himself. The house was built around his personal library, which came to have over 30,000 books. A few years after his house was built, he took a 6-month vacation, a 6-month tour of Europe with his wife, and this was the only vacation he ever went on. He was fervently devoted to letters, and his Escolios marks a significant contribution to literature and thought. Davila once said that one has to choose between a routine life and routine thought. So the book it's pretty significant and relevant. Davila is writing from a reactionary, traditionalist, right-wing Catholic point of view. And so it's very popular with the new right, today's nationalists and Catholics. Davila once described himself in 3 words: sensuous, religious, and skeptical. And this paradoxical combination is seen throughout his Escolios. For example, in aphorism number 199, he says, mysticism is the empiricism of the transcendent understanding. In the Escolios, Davila stresses ideas that are sound and do not get popular attention today: hierarchy, homogeneity, the goodness of law, mature and profound spirituality and philosophy, and logical and meaningful metaphysics to understand the world. His book contains reactions against modernity, liberalism, egalitarianism, democracy, technocracy, materialist economics, both capitalist and communist. And he suggests things for the right to think about and develop. So some examples that will give you a flavor of his work. Aphorism 23, a homogeneous multitude does not demand liberty. The hierarchical society is not merely the only society wherein man can be free, but is also the only society wherein he urges to be free. Number 24, liberty is not an end, but a means. Whoever takes it for an end does not know what to do when they obtain it. 61. Love of the people is the aristocrat's vocation. The Democrat only loves the people at election time. 86. More surely than wealth, there is an accursed poverty, that of the one suffering not from being poor, but from not being rich, that of the one complacently tolerating every misfortune shared by others, that of the one longing not to abolish poverty, but to abolish the good he envies. Number 120. The political presence of the multitude always culminates in an infernal apocalypse. 147. In medieval society, society is the state. In bourgeois society, state and society oppose one another. In communist society, the state is society. 182. One who does not turn his back on today's world dishonors himself. 270. To think as our contemporaries is the recipe of prosperity and stupidity. 275. Rejecting everything that today's world preaches would be presumptuous if from the hexameters of Homer to the final verses of Yeats, all the literature of the Occident does not preach the contrary. 380. Violence is not enough to destroy a civilization. Each civilization dies of indifference between the peculiar values that founded it. 401. The cause of democratic stupidities is the confidence in the anonymous citizen, and the cause of his crimes is the confidence of the anonymous citizen in himself, which is related to aphorism 410. If circumspection creates pedants, enthusiasm creates imbeciles. So the Escolios is political, philosophical, literary, aesthetic, religious, economic, social, historical, and personal in scope. Davila and his aphorisms are already gaining attention on the internet. They gain followers on Facebook and Twitter. There are a couple blogs devoted to them, and they have a following in New Right and Catholic groups. Davila discusses all the meaningful, interesting things that modern etiquette demands we don't talk about, and he declares them succinctly, powerfully, and provocatively. As he says in aphorism 266, what is not religious is not interesting. In fact, his provocative voice and his exacting emphases can cause the translator trouble. Sometimes he is not being literal and is being somewhat sarcastic or facetious just to provoke thought. And sometimes his exacting emphasis sounds somewhat awkward, especially when trying to translate it and fit it into an English syntax. So I have two examples of him being provocative. Aphorism 30, our ultimate hope lies in the injustice of God. And aphorism 347, in the incoherency of a political constitution resides the only authentic guarantee of freedom. Examples of his awkward use of language is sometimes he uses the word intelligence where we would normally use the word mind, and sometimes he uses the word being or beings where we would use the word persons. While this is somewhat of a Spanish convention, he uses it to stress a philosophical idea that he's getting at. And it's a motif that carries throughout the work. But at least he is honest and owns up to his awkwardness at times. In 407 he says, writing would be easy if the same phrase did not, according to the day and the hour, seem alternatively mediocre and excellent. Also, some of his aphorisms are personal and meta-discursive, commenting on the book itself, making it interactive and thought-provoking. For example, in aphorism 1, he says, a brief text is not a presumptuous pronouncement, but a gesture that disperses scarcely outlined. Number 4, the reader will not find aphorisms in these pages. My brief expressions are the chromatic touches of a pointillist composition. 18, in the tedious hours of the intelligence mature its coincident summers. Only the patient and laborious writer serves succulent delicacies to the reader. 215. Write short so as to conclude before cloying. 346. To give a definition of nobility would be impertinent with certain readers and enigmatic for others. Anyway, Davila's works and ideas are very popular with today's reactionary traditionalists and nationalists, and those affected by and disaffected by and critical of modernity. He's been translated into several languages already, most notably German and Italian, which has had a significant impact on their literature and philosophy.